today, but let me now shift focus to the big discussion of the day, the Indian aviation space. And are we going to see any major deals taking off? There has been a lot of buzz that has been building up. Let me go across to our correspondent Arijit Banerjee, who also joins us as a guest on the show. Arijit, take us through some of those recent talks that have been happening, potential stake sale for Jet Airways as well as SpiceJet.
Yes, Shweta, if you look at it, of course, there was this huge buzz about Jet looking at Etihad for a stake, for buying for Etihad buying a stake in Jet Airways. Apart from that, as you said correctly, there were reports of SpiceJet speaking to the Malaysian low-cost airline AirAsia. If you look at it, Shweta, at this time, with this window of opportunity opening up for Indian aviation companies, they are definitely looking for buyers. So it's not as if the foreign airline companies are looking to buy into Indian companies. It's the reverse way around this time. Indian companies looking at interested parties, whether it is earlier, even though aviation was if FDI in aviation was allowed earlier, it was only companies which were not in the aviation business. Now with the change in rules, foreign airlines can buy stake in Indian aviation companies, and that's why these companies are going in. Jet, of course, is reported to be looking to sell at least 24% stake, which could be for about $400 million. And SpiceJet could be looking at a similar amount. Jet Airways, of course, has to restructure the holdings it has, because most of its holding is through an Isle of Man company, so that needs to be changed. Those structures need to be changed to be brought about. But the big question is whether foreign airline companies will be interested, and that will depend on 2 or 3 factors. One, government regulation in terms of the costs which are imposed on an airline. 40% of operating cost is ATF. ATF is taxed separately in separate states. The tax rates are very high. The second is the airport charges, which most of these airports are now taking from airlines. They have recently been hiked, which means that the cost structure has become even steeper. Apart from that, the other big issue, of course, is going to be intensive competition. Is there going to be consolidation in the sector? Kingfisher is almost non-operational, so is it going to fold up? That, I think, will be a very crucial factor, because most of the foreign companies are looking at further consolidation in the sector, so that the number of players reduce, and the intense competition which is happening, where many airlines actually have very low yields because they are forced to sell seats at lower than their cost, that reduces. So that is going to be a crucial factor for foreign airline companies to come into the Indian aviation scene.
All right, let's try and discuss each of those factors that Arijit has flagged off in just a bit, but let me try and get a sense from Kapil as to whether we're going to, how soon are we going to see any of these major deals taking off?
Well, our assessment is that minus Indigo and the fact that Air India has already got the approval from the government to raise money, I think about $1.3 to $1.4 billion of capital raise would happen over the next few months.
Okay.
And there's largely would be strategic investors coming in. It could be financial investors, and I could see possibly an IPO. I'm excluding Indigo out of it.
Okay.
So I think between all instruments available, roughly about 1.3 to 1.4 billion of capital raise.
Those are huge numbers, yes, we're talking about.
And you could, as I said, you could have strategic investors coming in. You could see financial investors. You could see a combination of both, and you could have a reportedly one LCC looking at an IPO. So everything on the table. The question is about valuation. Question is about timing. But I definitely see in the next few months. It could be before the end of this fiscal. Some could be in the early part of the next fiscal. But I definitely see a couple of deals happening.
Specifically to talk about Jet Etihad, because that has been creating a lot of buzz. The stock has zoomed clearly in the last 1 month ahead of possibility of that deal taking off. How close do you think Jet is to signing that deal?
Well, first of all, I think Etihad has been interested even before the FDI actually was approved. So they have been in the market. It's a part of their strategic blueprint for the next 10 years they're building, which involves building powerful alliances and ensuring that they take minority equity stakes in companies which are of strategic interest. So in pursuit of that, India is a critical market for them. It's almost like an extension of a home market, a very big market.
Right.
So from a strategic perspective, it's one of the key markets for Etihad. So one, I would think that there would be a very structured, deep-rooted alliance, which is what I guess would be the first step. Second step would be some equity investments.
So it's not a stake sale immediately, but a marketing alliance is what you're talking about.
Initially, it would be an alliance. Based on that, subsequently, it could be equity investments. But I'm not very sure about the valuations part, though.
Okay, valuation, let's try and understand that. Mr. Chirendra Bhargav, my question to you really is something that Arijit had flagged off, that it's clearly not just a valuations game. Are foreign players right now in a wait and watch mode? Do they want to see the Indian government's commitment to this sector? Do they want to see certain policies that are more conducive? Because many actually say that just allowing FDI in aviation isn't good enough. They obviously need to ensure that the sector does not result in destructive competition, if I could quote Mr. Ratan Tata here.
Shweta, I think the unpredictability of the government is too well known, so I don't think that will hold up any of the foreign carriers from investing in India. As far as the Indian market environment is concerned, we all know it's cost prohibitive. Airlines aren't doing well because the ATF prices are very high. The India's growth story that we had, that India was registering 18% growth, is no longer valid. 2012 is shown in a negative mode, the domestic market, and so is the international market not doing very well. Now, why would a foreign carrier put in money in an Indian carrier is the question. Yes, Kingfisher, Vijay Mallya had mooted the idea of FDI by airlines in Indian carriers when Kingfisher was facing a deep financial crunch. The decision came in too late. By that time, Kingfisher had been choked, and the other players are probably going to reap the benefit. The question that comes in is, why should a foreign carrier invest in India? There would be two things that any international airline will look at an Indian carrier. What is the value addition that an Indian carrier do to them? What financial advantage can it bring to them? The sad part is that the value that an Indian carrier could have given to a foreign carrier and therefore become an attractive proposition has been eroded by the government of India itself. Allowing in foreign carriers to touch many points in India, so they don't need an Indian carrier to bring in traffic to the main gateways of India and provide traffic for Europe, United States flights, etc. So that's one erosion. Second is, the balance sheet of the Indian carriers is not rosy at all. Now, which means you're going to be putting money to basically bail them out rather than take them on a northward trajectory that they expand and expand fast and capture and make the stranglehold on the Indian market still stronger. Now, if you look at it totally, well, 3 months since the government announced the policy, we have only been hearing about it. I'm not saying that these kind of deals can be struck in a matter of weeks. It does take time. People are going to do due diligence, etc. But the reality is something more needs to be done by the government of India to make the Indian aviation sector vibrant, make it lucrative, and only if you can do that will foreign carriers be interested.
All right, you mentioned valuation, and I'd like to take that point forward. Mr. Kanu Gohain, I'd like to understand if right now Indian carriers are attractive bets for foreign carriers or not. Because on one hand, yes, there's been value erosion, but also the fact that we're seeing valuations getting more and more attractive is one of the reasons why we may see foreign carriers even being interested.
You see, what Mr. Bhargava has stated is correct in the sense that if the Indian carriers do not have a value add item into a foreign carrier, then why should a foreign carrier invest into India? But nevertheless, the policy of the government to allow foreign direct investment into the airlines from an airline, foreign airline, is in the right step, because the foreign airline will understand how the airline business runs. Now, the foreign airlines who are coming into India, as Mr. Bhargava has stated, have got many points of landing in India. That is not an issue where the foreign airlines will not have an alliance with the Indian carriers, because they know that the Indian market is still available for them to tap in spite of having many landing locations. These foreign carriers understand that if they have an alliance with an Indian carrier, they can tap into the Indian market in a more big manner.
Do you have the NDTV Profit app? all the markets, all the news in your own homemade, ready-made portfolio available there for you.
We will right now answer what you should sell, what you should buy when markets are down.
Download it indietvprofit.com/apps. Get the best app from the channel you trust.